So, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the tier list video, everybody's favorite thing that I sometimes forget to do on patches and I miss out on those free likes. Today, we have some guests, the well renowned Empire aficionado himself, Bloodpenguin. Bloodpenguin, say hi to the people. There he is.
Hello.
And Stratgame, probably the best player in my clan, the Night Crew. I don't know what you main these days, but you used to give me tips on Warriors of Chaos for like full mobility rush builds.
What's up, folks? Yeah, I don't really main anything. I try to main winning. That's the only thing.
You main winning, you main the good factions. So we're switching up for this tier list. We'll be doing like kind of a combined tier list just between ourselves. Makes it a little more interesting than me screaming at a screen for 23 minutes straight. Yeah, that's about it. Let's get right into it. Beastmen. Where does everybody put the Beastmen?
I have them right where you do at A.
A.
I think that they're very good right now.
Strat, you agree with A?
I got a mid B. I got a mid B.
Mid B.
Yeah.
Well, what for you takes them out of A?
I think just as a general thing, I look at matchups, and right now I don't think that Beastmen are. They've got a lot of neutral. They're about one third neutral, one third bad, and one third good. So to me, that means a B faction. Um, I like their chaff. I like their mobility. I like some of the SEMs, but their ranged game is not great, and their cavalry is good but not great. So that leads to problems.
We see them at a lot of high level of play, which I guess is why I put them into A tier. But that could just be their popularity and like they've been functionally the same faction since the Torox DLC. Good.
Uh, I think they have problems with some of the undead. They've got a problem with VC and then Tomb Kings and then Siege, Cathay, High Elves, Tonya. That's where I think that they falter.
Yeah, I'll give you that. They're not as great against a lot of the top tier factions. As we talk
Uh,
about it, I'm kind of leaning towards B. Penguin, are you still staunchly in the
So
A?
I think that they're one of the strongest rush factions. They do have the problem if they'll run out of steam if the game continues too long, but they are definitely, in my opinion at least, the biggest winners on getting the Zangors on their roster. Those guys are give them a really stalwart front line that just is really hard to remove. And a lot of factions, such as like the High Elves or the Empire, I know, like to use Burning Head to just stunt the initial charge of all the infantry and patch some of the holes. And having the 80 armor in the front line just makes it so that that doesn't work anymore. And then a lot of their rushing elements, so the Centaurs and the Minotaurs, just make it so that they can punch through front lines very easily. So factions that are really reliant on their archers to win them the game can run into problems very quickly. I do agree that they struggle against the uh, undead factions because they tend to just last longer. But they did get access to the incarnate elemental of beasts for a Mortis engine now, which also helps them in that matchup as well.
That is true. Incarnate's pretty good. Uh, I'll be a tiebreaker here. I think I'm going to downgrade them to B because as we were talking, I also realized if I rate them against the other A tier factions, I definitely think it's an uphill struggle. Like even Empire, I've been struggling with because most of their options to kill the war wagons are melee options, which war wagons can just ignore. So it's like it'd be weird for me to put them in A tier when I feel like everything else that's in my A tier beats them. But I would put them like top of B. I'd say they're the gatekeepers to getting into A's. You have to be a better faction than the Beastmen. So for now, we'll put them in B. But B or A is pretty acceptable, I would think. If you put them in D tier, you're trolling. Okay, this one's going to be short. How do we feel about the dragons? The Cathay? Could I just put
Uh,
them in S?
yeah, they didn't get changed at all. The only thing is that I people are still experimenting with Cathay, so I haven't seen anybody super hard box, but they were able to do it before, and now they've just got better tools to do it. So yeah, they're gonna be S tier for sure.
Yeah.
Crowmen are a top 5 unit in the game right now for me. They're that good.
Crowmen are definite. Like coming out of the DLC, I was trying to calm people down about Cathay, and then when the DLC released and more people got their hands on it, the Crowmen were not a unit that a lot of streamers focused on in early access, and oh boy, they are slapping kids. I personally I took
Dude,
some flame cannons as dwarves. Crowman suicide dove them in front of slayers, killed all my flame cannons, and left with half HP. I was like, what? You can't
they're
just do
they're
that.
they're busted, dude. They're busted, and I think that there's actually some play styles that it will unlock that we haven't figured out yet. Specifically, I think Crowmen enable Grand Cathay to be a rush faction, along with the Lion that provides the
Yeah,
harmony buffs. There's like a whole new like kind of pillar of strategies that hasn't been figured out with Cathay at the moment. So they're only going to get better from this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, and unfigured out, they're already still really good.
yeah, I've been experimenting with using the Jet Lion in rush builds to support the Jade Lancers, and they're very strong. And just have Crowman come with them and flank any cavalry that you run into, and you can just win the mobility game so quick.
Even peasant horsemen can be a little scary. This one's spicy depending on who you talk to. Trader GG insists that Chaos Dwarves are an unbeatable faction if you play them right, but I have yet to see it. I personally, I think I put them in C, but they feel very one trick right now. Um, can you abuse their single entities? If yes, good. If not, bad. Thoughts? Let's go to Strat first.
Eh, yeah, I put him as bottom bitch in the B tier. Legitimately, I've got him the most far over. Yeah, exactly. And they, I play Trader a lot, and he's got some good builds. And maybe if more people were kind of like working on this on the in the multiplayer scene, that it would be no more. But I just feel like they're B tier.
Yeah, I have them in the exact same spot.
You both have them in B.
Yeah, very bottom of B tier. I
Wow.
think that their Infernal Ironsworn are also super strong, and other than that, they struggle.
Hmm.
If you can take out their elite infantry and take out their train, then you're gonna win.
Well, we'll put him in B. I'm clearly outvoted, but on the C, to explain my C position real quick, I think even though their infantry is supposed to be bad with the 150 and the 300 gold laborer costs, I think they are too bad for that cost. Like Skaven slaves, peasant mobs, and zombies are all better somehow. So taking their chaff, even though you feel like you have to, when I'm fighting Chaos Dwarves and when I'm playing as them, I'm like, well, that was a waste of gold to even bring them at all. So I think those guys either need a cost reduction or like a slight leadership buff, like just slight, or the Chaos Dwarf Warrior units probably need a cost decrease because the Ironsworn are amazing, but everything beneath them on the melee infantry side is just utter trash in my opinion. So that would be my C ranking, but y'all make some good points, and I guess we're just trusting that traders builds are the real deal. Bretonia, I have only heard of them being S or A. I'm curious where you guys fall. I'm personally in the A category because I think the two S tier factions are so much better than Brett that I can't justify putting them up there. Either that or I need an S plus tier. So I'd put them A, but I'm open to thoughts. Let's start with Penguin as the resident Brett player out of the three of us.
Yeah, I have them at top of A. They're no longer super busted. The Grail nerfs are good. They don't blow through infantry anymore, but they are still extremely good against cavalry. Uh, they only increase the price of them by 100 gold, which is basically a peasant. So any build that you had your Grail Knights in before, you just remove one peasant and you're fine. Uh, the Grail Relique, same thing. It's a one peasant tax. Together, it's like a one man at arms. So at the end of the day, your builds aren't going to change that much. They're just slightly worse now. So I'd have them at top of A tier.
Strat, any rebuttal?
I'm gonna plant the flag on S on for Bretonian. I feel like there's sound reasoning. A, um, they're not disadvantaged into many factions. I only have them as disadvantaged into Vampire Coast, Skaven, Khorne, and potentially GC now. So that's only 4 factions that they're disadvantaged into, and they basically have the same exact matchup matrix as they had before. Um, and they have the most agency out of probably any faction in the game with hippos. They can, if they need a unit to die, they're good. They've got grails, which are the best armored anti-large cavalry in the game by far. They're good against SEs, and Alberic is an S tier combat lord, probably the best combat lord in the game for the cost when you bring him at 1850. So I'm I'm gonna in so I just feel like they're good into all the S and A tier factions, and that's why they should be yes. The factions that they're bad into are not really relevant in the meta.
Hmm.
So that's where I'm at. I'd say yes, but you guys can overrule me.
Well, I let you convince me with the Beastmen, and you and Blood Penguin outvoted me on the Chaos Dwarves, so we'll leave him an A for now, but you make some good points. And like I said, the community is bouncing between S and A depending on who you ask, so it's definitely top of A,
Yeah,
if A at
I
all.
I do have them at the very top of A. They are definitely on the border of S and A.
Oh, and for chat's sake, we will try to order these by like degree. So like Beastman sitting at the top of B and Castorf sitting at the bottom of B. I'll try to be consistent with that, but my two co-hosts might have to help keep me honest because I usually when I do these things, I usually just plop them in the spot and I kind of treat the balls the same. But a lot of people prefer the rankings, so I'll try to keep on that. Dork elves. Most tier lists submitted to me have A. I also put them there. They're not super OP, but they're still very much meta. Uh, Thoughts? Let's start with Strat this time.
Good infantry, good lord, good range, good matchups. I like them right there, and I like them basically top of A as well, but just not busted, not like this, not the S faction busted.
All right. Penguin, you're
Yeah,
already outvoted, but here's your chance.
I have nothing else to add. I have them in A. Same thing as Strat was just saying. They're just pretty decent at everything, and they have great lord options.
Yeah, I do have some suggestions for Dark Elves in like future patches, but overall the faction would get very light touches for me. I think they're in a good spot. I'd just be buffing some of their less seen lords and maybe nerfing like Soul Stealer, but that'd be it. The dwarves. Strat's gonna have to do some inner Gotrek Starbreaker or whatever his name is now, repping because he's not here to defend himself. I personally put dwarves in B. I'm very curious about your guys' thoughts. And my defensive B, real quick, is I feel like dwarves played by anybody besides a dwarf main is incredibly underwhelming, but doesn't hit like C or D. They feel like they have a floor. Like you can take your hands off the keyboard and dwarves will be okay. Whereas if you take your hands off the keyboard with wood elves, you're literally like, you know, everything just dies and you lose. But dwarves, like, I don't know. I feel like they have a very high floor. But I put them at B because besides Gotrek or Sabrus, as he used to be called, I'm really not scared when somebody picks dwarves. Uh, Empire is next, so we'll start with Strat again, so that Penguin's favorite faction can start with him.
All right. I play Sabrus a lot. He's probably the most active dwarf main in the community. He has extremely good builds that he thinks about, and I believe that dwarves basically have no bad units. They have the best hero hero hammer combination in the game with Gotrek, Felix, and Thoric. They also have Thanes, which are the best, probably the best or most well-priced SE in the game, at 500 for an absolutely ridiculous Lord combo of stats. Gyrocopter's Brimstone guns are incredibly good. Yeah, they just I just think that they synergize very well, and I would put them at A.
All right.
Hey, oh man. I have them in C tier.
All right. I feel like that needs an explanation.
I the dwarves feel like a faction that is like held up by Thoric. Thoric is probably the best lord in the game. His AoE buff is great, but at the end of the day, you always know what they're going to have. They're always going to have armored infantry, and it's just, is it going to be in a box or is it going to be spread out? Any faction that has mobility can punish it if it's spread out, so it generally forces them into a box, and then you just bring your heaviest, hardest hitting units, and you can tend to rip them apart. Uh, some factions aren't able to do that, but I think that with the new DLC units, all of them uniquely help the factions that got them to counter the dwarves. So they just lost, I think, two good matchups in Cathay and Kislev, which now I think are just terrible for the dwarves. And they're just, at the end of the day, very slow. So anything Zinch is a problem for them as well, because if you get rid of the ranged units, then there's nothing to kill the SEs, and that's something that a lot of factions can do, especially with Blue Fire.
Yeah, healing is still very strong, which is something the dwarves do not have. So that would be a point in the favor of Blood Penguin. But a point in the favor of Strat is somehow Creative Assembly rebroke foot characters to be less hittable since before the Chaos Dwarf DLC. So Hero Hammer got a little tankier, but yeah, healing is still the meta. Ugh. I mean, with an A, a B, and a C, mathematically that would say B, but that's easy to say for me being the one who said B originally.
Let's just keep it B.
Yeah, I'll, I'll put them some space between them and the Beastmen in case we have a better B, but they're in there. All right, Blood Penguin. I'm not even going to start this one at all. You're just straight up starting out. Empire.
I have them as high B tier. Uh, War Wagons can push them into A tier, arguably, but I think that they're B tier. They have decent, uh, cost-efficient frontline infantry. Their cavalry is all okay. Their lord options are really good with Boris and Karl Franz, and you can even bring Gelt or Hart if you want to go cheaper. And they just have a lot of different play styles so that you can always kind of keep your opponent guessing on what you're gonna do.
My immediate rebuttal is, but war wagons do
Yeah,
exist, my friend.
if you go three war wagons and are really good at kiting, and against factions that don't have missiles, like good missiles, then they can be A tier, but they also are hard to kite.
Yeah.
Because it's not the war wagons that are hard to kite, it's keeping them alive with your cavalry or your pistoliers or grenade launchers.
I agree with a lot of your assessments. While I personally put them in A, I agree with a lot of your assessments that like if war wagons didn't exist, this would be a very different and I think a lot of people would say more enjoyable faction to play as and against. But I don't think that's the reality. I think war wagons do exist, and for me that definitely puts them in A. Strat.
I got them right where you've got it on the list right now.
Oh,
As high B. I've got them as high B.
okay. Well,
Yeah, they've got
did we say anything Did we miss anything you wanted to touch on, or are we just going to leave them at high
Just,
B?
just a one-liner is that I think that their infantry is quite good. Very, very good cost effectiveness and works very well with the faction.
I'm actually shocked I got outvoted. I was for sure Strat was going to join me in A. Okay, well, rip. Well done, lads. Well done. The green beans. I controversially put them in C, and we'll let start this one off. Strat, where are the green beans?
They are in B. They are not in C. I'll give a couple things. They have the best cavalry unit in the game, in my opinion, with the orc Boar Boy Biggins, armored, AP, anti-large at 850 is very good. They have an extremely good cost-effective front line with goblins and squigs stacked. And then the trolls, they have the best trolls in the game with stone trolls and the ROR. And then they have probably the best support lord in the game with Wurzag. Just works so well with the faction. Just on those traits alone, I would put him in B, certainly mid B.
Well, to defend my C pitch before we throw it over to Penguin, I did put them in C. I have one build that works particularly well, and I think it punches up against a lot of the tier list. But my problem is that it is one build, and if I ever don't take Wurzag, I feel like half of the faction I used to be playing. And Wurzag he's not like Malekith or the Supreme Sorceress of Dark, where you know it's coming, but you can't do anything about it. If you know Wurzag's coming, you can fuck him up pretty bad with like Spirit Leech, Fireball, Manticores, like planning around Wurzag. It's really hard to keep him alive at times for me, and I feel like that reliance on one lord really hurts them. But I also acknowledge that some people really like Azhag, and I'm just not one of those people. But Azhag does solve those problems for people that enjoy him. So that was my C rating. Is that one build does not a faction make? But Penguin, what are your thoughts?
I have them in mid B as well. I basically agree with everything that Stratgame said. I think that the Knights of the Realm are slightly better of a cav unit just because of their high leadership. But
Mm-hmm.
other than that, that's the only thing that I would say that I would even try to argue with Strat on. I think that he's right about everything. Their front line is great. Their trolls are great. Their cavalry is also good. I do think that Wurzag is definitely the strongest lord. I want to shout out to the Night Goblin War Boss, though. I think he's great. Tormentor Sword and Fermented Fungi are really, really strong
They are
Yeah,
in
really
that's a
strong.
combination
crazy
with each
good.
other, yeah.
That's a crazy good combo right there.
All right, another L for Human Boy. Not on not on a good streak here. Okay, what's next? Ooh, Lizardman. Okay, this might be an agreement topic. I feel A. I don't really have a whole lot of follow up to that just yet, but I feel A. Where are we at? Pengu?
Penguin,
Uh,
yeah.
I have them at B.
God damn it. Of course you have him at B. All right. So I know how I'm structuring this conversation. Strat, where are you at?
I'm at A as well, but I don't play them a ton, and I think that they've just are really trolling into degeneracy right now with how they play with multiple stacking heals and blob is it's blobber kite. That's what it is. I don't think their faction's really set up well, and Source needs such a massive buff, and healing needs a nerf in order to make it something that I'd want to play.
Yeah, their extreme propensity for healing is definitely why I was leaning towards A, because that is the meta and that's what they want to do. So they go hand in hand. And I see them on a lot of streams and I see them usually do well. Now, in general, for the faction, why they're strong, before we get the B rebuttal, um, they have a ton of SEs and SEMs, the big dinosaurs that benefit from the healing changes coming into Warhammer 3. And then flying units in general charge better than they did in game 2, which made Ripperdactyls actually like pseudo cavalry because their charges can do insane damage. And we saw that a lot in the last couple patches for their meta matchups would be Ripperdactyls and healing, and that had to carry them through the game. But I will say their weaknesses, again, in general, is their front line is either too expensive or too bad. Like, Skinks for 300 gold is fine, but you have nothing between that and, like, Saurus. And there's Red Crested Skinks, but I personally think those are overcosted. So, the faction definitely has weaknesses. I still think they end up in A. But, Penguin, what's your argument for B?
Well, I agree with everything that you were saying with the healing and with SARS being bad and Skinks being the way. I just don't think that that makes them an A tier faction. Anything that if they run into any counters of their big SEs, they start to fold very quickly. So any focus fire, things like skin wolves for Norska or minotaurs for the beastmen and Khorne can just bog them down and really chop up their single entities before they're able to really get the healing going. And Ripperdactyls are really good on the charge, but they're really bad at being charged. So if you know that they're coming, you can just wait for them to land on something and then just them. And once they lose all their Ripperdactyls, they lose their agency in the battlefield, and then you can just bog down their single entities and shoot them. Or force them into bad fights.
Fair. Well,
I agree. I agree. It's just I just have a really tough time doing that, and usually there's like a cohort of Waddle or Temple Guard on the heal blob, so it's hard to isolate the heal blob for like something like a minnow to do. Like that's like step 6 in the game, and I get tripped up at step 4.
how do we feel about low A?
Yeah, I could be convinced of that.
Well, I don't think they're the strongest of A. I think Dark Elves and Bretonnia are definitely better factions, so they're definitely not top A. But I think lowish A is fine. Compromise there. This one's super divisive, dude. People have Tomb Kings from D all the way up to S. Uh, I'll start this one off, sure. I put them in C. I think they are a wildly overrated faction. I think Burning Head and countering your entire front line is really brutal. I think they have almost no mobility presence whatsoever, and I refuse to join the cult of the Necropolis Knights. Necropolis Knights are trash. Their lords are fine. Their weapons teams, quote unquote, are really good, but their weapons teams are doing so much work for that faction. And again, kind of my argument with Wurzag is like, well, if I know I just need to kill the Ushabti and Sparkle Stalkers, I'm going to bring some anti-large arm-piercing mobility or missiles, and I won the game. I did it. So I put them in C. I think they're wildly overrated. We'll start with Strat. I know you talked to Sabris, who is also a connoisseur of Tomb Kings, so...
I think that the faction's so thinly played that it's hard to really see where they rest in the meta. So I think that's one thing. I think that the stats in the various tournaments and play has led that to be true. But they've got too many good units for me to put them in C. Like at the core, Skeleton Spearmen are a strong unit for their cost. Nakar Warriors infantry are a strong unit for their cost. Tomb Guard is a strong unit for their cost. Tomb Guard Halberds is strong. Their archers are an unroutable archer unit. Their horsemen are super good. I think that it's more on the top end that there's a weakness of the roster because the stuff at the bottom end is actually like pretty good for the cost. And there's probably the best Tomb Kings player that I've played is Nameless Order. He has schooled me quite a few times in that matchup.
Very good.
And he's if you're not repping against the best player on the faction, sometimes you don't know what the power is. So I would just on the beatings I've taken, I would put him at B alone.
Okay, B. Penga, where do you land?
I agree with you, Hummus. I have them in C. I have them at the top of C, but I do have them in C. I think that they struggle really badly against mass archers and against mass, like, heavy infantry. And you can try to predict that and build into it, but their mobility is pretty weak. Necro Knights can do good, and I've been beaten on stream a couple times due to those Necro Knights, but
I remember that game. I still think
But
the army
yeah,
losses of that were messed up, but I remember that game.
yeah. But well, I was talking with Sabris after that. He probably would have ended up winning
Oh, we
that
probably would
game,
have ended up winning, but
but
yeah.
I had a couple more minutes. But I just their front line is very susceptible to magic, and if they box, then they can get just cut out of their box by heavy infantry or shot out of their box by archers. And if they try to rush you, their mobility is so weak that they can tend to get their infantry pulled apart and uh, just mincemeated.
I I know we're not due for a Tomb Cakes DLC, but I would love some heavy cav between Necropolis Knights and Hekar Horsemen. I know it's like not their thing, but even some like 900 gold cav with just a bit more armor. I don't know. That's what I want out of them. But I'll put them at high C. I personally had them pretty low C, so this is kind of the middle where it's like between B somewhere, bottom of C. Um, Corn's interesting. Berserk has been clapping me a lot on Corn recently, but no one else is making that faction look like it does anything. I had him in D. Penguin, what do you think?
I have them in C. Uh, I think since their Fleshhound nerfs, they've definitely been suffering, but their throwing axes are good. The Chaos Knight changes do help them, and chosen are their chosen with dual weapons are amazing.
I love their chosen two weapons.
Uh, Valkia is an incredible lord. She is also probably the only lord on the roster, although you can get away with using a herald. But I would tend to any aspiring Corn player should stick to Valkia. Her Spear of Slafnir is incredible, and she's just a great duelist.
I'll agree on the spear. I disagree on the duelist personally. Strat, bring us home. Where is it landing?
Uh, I've got them as one of the bottom two factions in the entire game right now. And yes, Berserk has beat me as well, but that doesn't change my opinion. It's a D tier and through and through for me.
Mike Tyson beating me with the pool noodle does not make pool noodles A tier.
Yes.
All right. For now, I'll leave Corn down there. Penguin sung a lot of their praises. Roughly why we all had them in the C and D is just their lack of Lord options. Their lower tier infantry are disappointing. And as actually Penguin did mention that, their Fleshhounds taking a nerf really hurt their mobile game. Ooh, the new hotness of this patch, Kislev. I had him at A. Most people have him at A. Do we all have him at A? Penguin, you play Kislev. I'll start with you.
Yeah, I have them at A for sure. They didn't need the incarnate elemental, really. It does help them with vampire counts, but otherwise, it's not super useful in their roster. They don't have a great way to use it in land battle. In domination, it's great. Um, but things in the woods are really strong, and Akshinas are just broken. They are the Arwar specifically, the Wolf Hearts, are just an auto include in any uh, Kislev build that you want. They now have uh, great sweepers for their backline. They're a really strong kite faction. You can't. The stock on the Akshinas makes it so that you can't shoot them before they get into range of you, and then they act as shades.
Yeah.
And Kislev was already good at the kite and fight style of play, but now having access to both the AP missiles that the Akshina provide that just deal more damage than Streltsy do, and having cheap and effective infantry clearing options, whereas before you'd have to go with like a sled, now you can have 700 gold unit that will do the job just as well and is faster at getting away.
Strat, any rebuttal, or are you in the A team?
No, I was on high B, but I'm gonna defer to Penguin. I mean, he plays them probably 10 times more than I do. I mean, I think that 12 range will be very common
Oh yeah.
into a lot of factions, though. Um, that's it.
All right, here is a faction none of us are particularly qualified to speak about, but Strat, take it away. High elves. Where are we going?
Oh God, I had him as the worst faction in A tier, and it was just based on the general stats and how well statted the units perform added martial with the martial prowess and martial mastery, and they have healing and they have a very good combat lord in Imric, although he is expensive. And that is it's like just the black can basically take the same build into every faction. A couple dragon princes, couple spearmen, couple archers, and Imric and a healcaster, and you basically have a viable army. Um, but bottom of A tier is what I had him at.
I real quick, I fluctuate between A and C depending on when I'm asked. I think they're a very fun faction, but I just cannot wrap my head around where these guys fall. Some games I'm playing or watching, they look horrible and they just like have no agency. They're crazy stat hot frontline holds, but nothing else does, and they slowly lose the game. And then there's other games where it's just like, oh yeah, Imric can put this on his back, or wow, Dragon Princes are incredible, or this faction's really cool. I have a lot of fun. I have no idea where they land, man. Penguin, what thoughts?
I I have them at B tier. I think that they're significantly weaker than the Dark Elves, but I will say that I kind of have to agree with you in that I just don't know where this faction falls all the time. Sometimes there's just a box, and I am entirely incapable of breaking a high elf box, or other times it just collapses instantly, and I don't really understand why. Sometimes it feels that the Silvern Guard can last forever, and other times they crumple to like a Marauder. So I have them at B because generally I'm not super afraid of seeing them, but I don't play them enough to really judge based on that.
All right. Between our two super lukewarm opinions, and we're roughly close to where Strat put them, I'm going to leave them at the bottom of A. Um, yeah, that's it. Seems right. They're either like they're in B or bottom of A, and our B's getting kind of full. And I definitely think that High Elves are in a better spot than Greenskins, than Beastmen. And Beastmen, I did say was the gatekeeper. And if you asked me between the two, I'd say, oh, High Elves is stronger than Beastmen. So I think I'll leave them in bottom of A for now, just based off of how we talked about Beastmen. But I could see arguments for them being in B for sure. Blood Penguin actually had to go. He told me ahead of time. So Blood Penguin, we'll catch you on the other side. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Strat and I are going to talk about Skaven, and you're not going to bring your blasphemy in here. Say that they're a good faction. They're not a good faction. They suck. They're in C.
They're in C. They are in C for complete right there. They're C for crap. That is they're so in C.
They're in C, man. So I'm joking. Blood Penguin's not leaving, but to quickly defend my C, and then I'll see if Strat has anything else to say, and then we'll pitch it over to Penguin for his Skaven or strong argument. Range units not being great right now is really bad for the Skaven because they have the strongest ranged units in the game. I won't pretend that they don't, but it's the strongest of a very struggling type of unit. Storm Vermin buffs are fun. I've been having fun with them, but it's not that doesn't help them in the meta at all. It just gives you more options to troll on quick battles, and troll I have been. Uh, Lack of access to real healing, and all of their healing monsters have insanely low leadership and armor, means they're easy to route off before they get even close to their heal cap. And your ranged units focusing on burst DPS not working in a healing meta, they're just at a loss, man. You get one big monster with a ton of healing, and you can kill like 90% of Skaven builds. I've been struggling so much. I love this faction, but I've been struggling so much at higher levels. Strat, anything I missed on why we put them in C?
Uh, I've actually got more things.
All right, hit it.
I think that the core thing is that unroutable mass is very strong into Skaven. So if a faction has Spawn, if a faction has Ushopti, if a faction has Cryptors, if a faction has Animated Hulks, if it has anything that's an unroutable mass piece, uh, it is going to automatically just probably have the lead in that. You know, if you have a faction with Spawn, take 4 of them into Skaven, always, in my opinion.
Mm.
Um, I have them as actually having 13 disadvantaged matchups out of 24, which is, I believe, the most disadvantaged matchups on the entire matrix. I think that's even more than Slanesh. So I definitely am very comfortable putting them in the into that bucket into C.
Now, Penguin, your rebuttal, because everyone in the universe knows you hate playing against Skaven.
Yeah, I hear that the range units don't work, but they always seem to work against me because I can't tell you how many times I've just watched my knights get deleted by globes charging into Skaven, or my lord getting deleted by rattling guns. Uh, I've just had a lot of problems dealing with the Skaven range units and trying to shutting down the backline forever. Uh, and it's not something that's changed much recently. And it does have to do with a lot of the factions that I play do have problems, specifically getting to the Skaven backline. So my opinion is skewed, and I'm not gonna pretend that it's not. I just have always had problems dealing with Skaven.
I think they're firmly in C because of the convictions of 2 out of the 3 people here. But for chat's sake, what would you have put them at?
I have them at A tier in mine, but I will defer to the Skaven players.
All right. Yeah, just in case there's people out there who are like, well, I want to know where he put them. All right, I'll leave them in C because Strat and I were very passionate about it. Um, and Skaven are allowed to cheat like that. So we need buffs. No, I actually have gone on stream several times saying I don't think Skaven need buffs. I think if range units are fixed and the healing meta is fixed, Skaven are fine. So I'd rather the problems around them get fixed than they get just buffed to hell. But moving on, Norska. A lot of people talk about Norska as we see them a ton on stream, honestly, and at high level tournament play, but they are a frequent counter pick faction. So I wonder where that puts them on a tier list because it's like you're not just talking about the top matchups that they're good into. We're talking about every matchup. I usually put them in A. Um, the quick version of that is just Skin Wolves are very strong paired with Ice Wolves, which is actually a strategy that Stratgame informed me of. Um, they win almost any mobility fight I've ever been involved in. Router Hunch's javelins and access to Lore of Metal makes big monsters not really a problem for them, and their front line is quite cost effective. While not the best in the game, it's up there. I think their only real weakness is their Lord slot is extremely limited. But other than that, I think they're a really solid faction. So I put them in A. More for not having many exploitable weaknesses than having any crazy strength. But since he taught me a bit about the faction, let's throw it over to Strat.
I've got them as kind of like a high C.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Oh wow.
yeah, yeah. But it's not due. It's definitely more. Their profile is they're not really hard countered by a lot of stuff, but I don't think they are heavily favored into a lot of stuff. So I think you can see them on stream because there's really not. They they can be played into many matchups, but I do think that they are more disadvantaged than advantaged. Um, but I was very numerical in my tier list, so I um, not so much just feels and stuff. I was looking at each matchup and thinking about it. So
All right. Pengu?
All right, I have them at the top of B. I think that, as you were saying, the Skin Wolves are just great. They can help win any mobility fight. I tend to always bring them with a Metal Caster because it helps them just rip into enemy in or armored cavalry. And the javelins also benefit from having the armor stripped off.
Huh.
I do tend to use them as a counter pick a lot of times, so I tend to hold them until I get either a dark elf matchup or lizards or high elves. I'll bring them into all of those. But they just have solid front line, good lord options. Even though it's only two real lords, Wolfric and Throg are both fantastic at what they do. Uh, and even you can bring the Cold Voider, the ROR dragon, to be a little bit spicy and catch people off guard with that. And they have the potential to be a skirmish faction as well. I just think that Norska is extremely well-rounded, and that's why I have them at the top of B. I think they're one of the strongest rush factions in the game.
Hmm. With an A, B, and a C, I'll throw them in B. And I think Empire, Dwarves, and Beastmen are all better than them, so I'll put them behind those guys. Um, but a lot of different opinions on Norska there. This one is strangely controversial. In my experience with Nurgle, Nurgle is a D tier faction all the way. But like in the community, man, people are like either Nurgle is great or Nurgle is shit. But there's no in between. I now Strat's gonna counteract me right now and say yeah they're B tier, but I've heard no one say that they're B tier. It's just like top of the meta, bottom of the meta. I personally put them at the bottom. I think Nurgle is, besides Demons of Chaos, the worst faction in the game. I think they are heavily held up by the Hero Hammer. And other than that, I just don't see what this faction does. Sometimes stream bullies me into playing them, and I always regret it. I hate playing as Nurgle. But we threw to Strat, so let's throw to Blood Penguin. Do you have any interaction with this faction? I never see you play Nurgle.
I don't play Nurgle. I played against Nurgle, uh, and I have them as low D tier. I think that they have the exalted heroes are great, and you can catch people off guard with a lot of Chaos Knights and Poison Warhounds instead of Kugath, so that you can try to catch their archers. But it doesn't really make the faction a lot better if you have two ways of playing instead of just one way of playing, but neither way is fantastic. Your only real hope is that your opponent's playing a faction that is either bad at killing Kugath or bad at killing your exalted heroes. And
Yeah,
that's why I have them at D.
and to wrap up the negative Nelly's take, unless Strat also hates them, I don't know. I assume you like them, but to wrap up the negative take, I also was heavily jaded by Cool Umbrella talking about how Soul Grinder's last patch and this patch kind of got shadow nerfed. Like nothing was ever said about it, but they just miss a lot more, and that made a lot of his double Soul Grinder builds just really bad. And then I know he was quite bummed out that those builds weren't working as well anymore. Strat, do you have a differing opinion?
I like how you were thinking I was gonna buff him. No, I'm or give him an A or a B. No, I'm in crap tier, so slightly above D tier, but I'm in crap tier. And it's one of the things that because we haven't piled on enough, they have no anti-large on their damn roster, which is very very troublesome in my opinion. You have to be using like AP like infantry to act as anti-large, or you gotta work things down with mass. It's just really cumbersome to actually get them to have builds that are strong against like kite styles with mobility elements. I just hate it really.
All right. They're sitting in D. Ogres. Most people talk about S and A. We'll start off with Strat, as I think you play ogres the most out of us right now. I had a brief love affair with them, but then last patch they were everyone's S tier for so long that I got tired of playing them, and I haven't played them in like a month. Strat, where are they at?
They're at A. They're at A. I mean, they were at S before, now they're at A, and I mean they've just got so many good units, good infantry, good Belchers are in it. They've, they have Mournfangs, which are very powerful. They've got the healing that's busted. They've got trappers, which were nerfed into a point where they're still a tier unit, or potentially still S tier. So, yeah, they've got one of the best lords in the game just from cost effectiveness with the with the heal caster at 1,000. Um, Pass it over to Penguin.
Penguin, what do you got?
Yeah, no, they've got trappers, they've got ogre bulls are fine, crushers and Mournfang cavalry are great, and their casters super cheap and effective. I just have them in A tier. Like they're just good at.
All right.
They've slightly gotten nerfed from the S tier, but more so it's the S tier has passed them.
Now, above or below Kislev, guys? Because I also agree A.
I had them just above Kislev.
I
Same.
vote a little bit below, but you both said above.
Yeah, well, I have the Dark Elves below both, but
Overruled. No, that's just my tilt against Dark Elves is legendary. All right. Strat, you agree they're above Kislev? Yes.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. Slanesh, where's Coops when you need him? All right. Well,
He's dumpster diving right now because Slanesh is in D tier.
yeah,
dude,
for
he
sure.
just he always plays Slanesh. Uh, all right. Yeah, I think we all agree D. Who wants to do the obituary on him so we don't spend forever on this faction?
I used to play Slanesh, but they're ever since the Hellstrider nerfs and the Marauder Horsemen getting a cost up, they're really bad. Their mobility is shockingly bad for being the mobile chaos faction. You have the Hellstriders with whips, which are fine. You have an overpriced front line of Marauders, and that used to have anti-infantry. Now they don't. You just have immune to psychology, which is fine, but it's not worth 450 for your entire front line. And so a lot of Slaanesh players are now relying on using heavy infantry like Chaos Warriors and Chosen, which is just worse than most of the other Chaos factions.
Fair enough. I have nothing to add, Strat.
I think the whip heavy infantry, Chaos Warriors and Chosen whip infantry is one of my favorite units in the game, but it still doesn't get him out of the dumpster tier.
All right. Moving on to a faction I have rated more highly than most people. I thought Coast was C or D tier. C last patch, and the handgun buffs for my specific playstyle, I have been loving it. I have been crushing people on Vampire Coast. I am a huge fan. Now I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I think they're B. I think they're B. Their roster still feels a little limited in some places, but the handgun buffs definitely gave me a little bit more threat than the kind of one build wonder that they felt like before this patch. So I put them in B. Um, let's pop over to Strat because the next faction will start with Penguin.
I got them as B. I mean, they have a style. They are weak to kite. They're a strong anti-rush faction. Um, yeah, I mean that's kind of the play. The animated Hulk nerfs that happened a while ago, I think, really hurt them. The overall, I don't know. I don't. The lords are okay. Their infantry's fine. Depth guard are fine, but susceptible to kiting. That's it.
All right, we got two Bs. Penguin.
I have very different opinion. I have them in D tier.
What?
I they
Sorry, you
if
go.
the faction has archers, then they're good against the coast. The coast is just very bad at dealing with a lot of ranged units, and in my experience, they've struggled with lots of armored infantry as well, like the Tomb Kings, except even worse at dealing with it. If they have the grenades as or the crabs are their best way of trying to fight back against heavy infantry, but again, just ranged units are so so devastating to the coast, and their only agency on the battlefield is with dogs.
Have you heard
So
of Queen Bess, my friend?
if you press spacebar, you can see which unit Queen Bess is targeting, and then you just move it back when you see the shot coming.
Okay, not all of us are elite hacksers. Okay, some of us just play the game.
Are people taking notes right now? That was a pro tip. That was a pro
Yeah,
tip.
that's the
Press
pro tip.
spacebar.
Just press spacebar and then just wait for the boom, and then you just move the unit that has the target on it, and it'll miss like every time.
All right, I'll put him in the bottom of B, below Chaos Dwarves, just for you. Um, but I'm gonna leave him in B. Uh, they can be the worst of B. I'll give you that, but they're up there. I hope we only have one more B tier faction, otherwise I'm gonna have to shrink that whole thing. Zinch. I think the
Oh,
interesting conversation is about whether they're better than Grand Cathay, because we all know they're fucking S, right? Am I off base on that one?
no, yeah, they're definitely S tier.
Strat.
Yes, I mean they're S tier.
All right. Are they better than Cathay? I would vote yeah.
So this is another thing where it's like people are still discovering Zinch. So if you just do the blue fire kite like they did before, except now you have the vortex beast to come in and kill everything else instead of trying to grind it out with a soul grinder. Yeah, they're gonna be better than Cathay. It's just I haven't seen it yet, uh, but Alfredinho is piloting them in the upcoming faction war, so I do imagine that we're going to be seeing some high level Zinj play. It's just I haven't experienced it yet, so I don't know exactly what the cap of Zinj is.
Yeah. The build that's getting a lot of success for me is Kairos with his blue fire and regrowth, Mutilith Vortex Beast, and two Chaos Knights, and then anything else you take honestly doesn't matter because it's like the blue fire will route stuff, and the Chaos Knights will clean it up, and the Mutilith Vortex Beast is there to kill any melee things that remain after you do your kiting. But we'll throw to Strat above Cathay
I
or
think
below.
I believe that it is below Cathay, and that's just maybe my ignorance because I've played Zeech probably the least amount out of any faction.
Hmm.
But I think that Cathay has more highly advantaged matchups, um, and I think that weirdly, I think Chroman might have affected the meta more for Cathay than the Mutilith Beast did for Zeech. But I understand that could be considered a hot take.
While I
Um,
would argue Zinch is better than Cathay, um, something that Penguin mentioned did actually resonate with me a little bit. I think if you have two 10 out of 10 players playing these factions, I think Zinch is better. But I think if you're talking about average players, Cathay is both easier to play and has less room to go wrong. Like if you're experimenting with something with Cathay, having crazy high stats as long as you're next to a ranged unit or a Jet Lion is a lot easier to pull off than Zinch. So I think in general, outside of the top, Cathay is probably better. So you have convinced me on that
They're
front.
also more fun. Even if they're in a box, it's more fun to fight the box than it is to get kited by blue fire.
Yeah, yeah.
It's rough.
I mean, okay, so we all know what's strong about Zinch, but the very short version for anybody watching this, like, why is Zinch an S? They just ignored that. You have, I think, besides Thoric, which we could get into a debate about, but we're not going to, debatably the best lord in the game with Kairos Fate Weaver. Your other lords behind him aren't bad. He's just amazing. Then you have one of the best single entities in the game in the Mutilith Vortex Beast. You have some of the best armor piercing dog units in the Screamers, and you have incredible knights with access to regrowth through Kairos. So it's just like the faction isn't really bad at anything now that you added Zongors, because their frontline used to be like their only main weakness, and Zongors patched that hole, patched that hole right up.
if the Changeling was on any other faction, Kairos would be a selectable Changeling Lord to choose because he is that good,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the I think that we brushed over this, but the mixed lore that Kairos has is the best spell kit in the game because it has Blue Fire, which is the best damage spell in the game, and then it has Regrowth, which is very abusive ones each. But having those two spells together is it probably exceeds any lore in the game, with maybe the exception of Nehek, but I think it easily surpasses that. But that's it.
Yeah,
All right.
I agree.
Demons of Chaos. I love them. I still think they're D tier. I have so much fun playing them. A lot of those are losses. uh, let's start with Strat here because the next faction's a Bloodpenguin faction, I think. Strat, where are demons?
Whenever I try to make them work, I fail miserably, but I have a great time proving it out. I don't know. I mean, they're D tier. I had them as D tier, and then I'm getting a suspicion that the Chaos factions aren't that good, bro.
There's one Chaos faction that I'll go to bat for, but yes, you're overall right. Okay, wait, Tzeentch is all the way up there just with a middle finger, but that wasn't the one I was thinking of. All right, Penguin, are you going to resurrect them from D?
Yeah, no, I have them as the worst faction in the game. They have the only armored unit on their roster are the Blood Crushers, which are just a mediocre unit anyways. So you know that you're just dealing with no armor, and you can plan accordingly. And most of their infantry is just going to be Nurgle or Tzeentch because Bloodletters and Demonettes are just bad. So it's
Agreed.
not a very. It's not as much of a diverse faction as it should be because there's just not a lot of good units amongst the demons to pick from.
Fair enough. All right, I don't know which of us plays Vampire counts more between you two, but it feels like a Bloodpenguin faction because you had a brief love affair with Blood Knights from Warhammer 2. So take us away, boss. Where do these guys land?
I have them as the bottom of B tier, but anywhere in B tier I could see.
All right.
They're since the healing, they just have not recovered. They have no range to help them out. The Blood Dragon Vampire Lord is still fantastic, though. Vargeists are very good. And Blood Knights, people are starting to bring those again. They're probably a little bit too expensive, but they are very strong of a unit. They just are struggling without the insane amounts of healing that they've been used to throughout the game's life cycle.
Yeah. Strat?
But
Oh,
they
sorry.
used to be S tier, so this is like in Warhammer 2 they used to be S tier, so them struggling is like B tier.
Yeah.
I got him basically at the exact same spot as Penguin. I do think that the skill atrophy playing vampire counts is real. When some of the Russians log in and start playing VC, then it's an A tier or a high A tier, and I don't think that that's a controversial statement at all. And when a lot of the OG players, I guess from game 2 and game 1 log back in, I do find that they punch a lot harder. But yeah, I've got them at B.
I also have them at B, maybe C. I'd have to look back at my list. Since the nerfs, I have not minded when my opponent picks vampire counts, which is a big change for me. I'd never hated them, but I've never particularly liked playing against them until this patch. And now I'm like, oh, this is fine. Stuff feels like it should to me. It doesn't feel as like, wow, nothing ever dies. So yeah, B's fine. All right, we're not allowed to pick any more Bs, otherwise I have to shrink things. It's not a real statement, but
Uh-oh.
close. Warriors of Chaos. This is the Chaos faction I was going to go to bat for. I think with the addition of Zongors, Mutal Vortex Beast, like all of the stuff they've been getting over DLCs just slowly added onto their roster. I think they are an A tier. I don't think they're particularly crazy in A tier, but I do think they're up here. It's just like the size of their roster alone lends its strength because you have to prepare for so many things. Even if not all the things are good, just the fact that they exist means you need to factor them in. Um, and I've been seeing a lot of people get good mileage out of the Warriors of Chaos recently. So I'd put them in A, but I'm very curious about your guys' thoughts. Let's start with Strat, because I remember he was my Warhammer 2 teacher for this faction.
I think that I had them at high C, but that's a very dated ranking, and I don't have them and I haven't played them recently. I was so furious about the fact that they didn't have any infantry that actually killed things for a long time. I just kind of put them out to pasture. But now I imagine that I'll play them again with Zongors, and I mean the ridiculous Lord selection, the ridiculous Lore of Magic selection. I mean, they've got so many tools, and I know that a lot of higher tier players have viewed them as very competitive.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
not to interrupt you, but you brought up a great point that I forgot. With this patch, they got Zongors and they got the Mutal Vortex Beast, but also Chaos Knights got their models like fixed, and now they feel like real cavalry. So now you actually have threatening heavy cavalry. That's not a meme. It's not the best heavy cavalry in the game, but it exists now. So
I think I wouldn't put them at A, but I'm very non-committal on the B, or on the C. Sorry.
all right, Penguin, where are we
Yeah,
at?
I have them in B tier. I think that they.
I hate you a lot.
Yeah, that's why I saw the Warriors of Chaos. I was like, uh-oh.
Damn it. All right,
Because
give your reasons while I shrink
they
everything.
have a lot of units and a lot, but they don't have a ton of play styles. Really, the only things that you've really got to like worry about when you're building an army are they going to have a single entity blob or are they not? They can have differences in like how much kite they have, how many monstrous units they bring, but at the end of the day, they're either you just need to be prepared that they have uh, the Mutalith Vortex Beast with Festus and like Herald Hammer Storm in a blob of healing, and
You
that's
can't actually
you
bring that army though,
you can't bring
because
that
that's
army
yeah.
because that's two Mortis engines. But if two giants, Festus and Herald is an army you can bring, and then just chosen around them. Uh, and I think that they've got a lot of different units that they can bring. They can be a very fun faction. I really have been enjoying the Chaos Knights now that they work well. And I've also been experimenting again with Kite on Warriors of Chaos, which with the Marauder Horsemen. But that is their only real ranged unit, so it does limit their playstyle in that way. The Warriors of Chaos are generally going to march at you.
Would you put them above or below vampire counts?
I would say above vampire counts, they have just more that they can do.
All right. I won't put above greenskins. I think that's a step too far, but I think vampire counts is right around where they are.
But yes, they are a very fun and faction to play. So
All right. All
they
right.
do win points for that, unless you're Festus blobbing.
The final one, the Wood Elves. Did their buffs get them out of D tier? What are we thinking? Let's go to Blood Penguin to finish out the factions. This is the last faction.
I have them at bottom of C tier.
All right.
I Their cavalry is decent. It's not great, but Stag Knights are pretty hard hitting. They're really bad at taking a charge, so they're really good with the Glade Riders, who are actually quite good for their cost. Wild Riders are still not great. They're pretty flimsy, but they're very fast, so they can get around, and as long as you're not letting them get charged, they can do a lot of work for you. Otherwise, you're gonna have to play them very weird. I've been I've actually been playing a lot of Wood Elves recently, and just trying with very thin front lines and a couple archers in the back. The Glade Guard, is that what their archers are called?
Yes.
Yes, Glade Guard. They are very good and they're very cost efficient archers. And uh, three of them, and just spreading out really wide. Because the best thing that the Wood Elves have is their mobility. The buffs, the 50 gold off of the Wild Riders didn't help them a lot. The 100 gold off the War Dancers also didn't help them a lot. But I have been seeing why they're not D tier. They're slightly above that. And there's also just a ton of different ways that you can play them with Zotes, with trees, and with archers, like with a full kite with the Way Watchers. I think that they're C tier, but what do you guys think?
I agree with most of everything you said. The only thing I would counter is I do think the War Dancer buffs were impactful, and I think the Glade Riders with their bows buffs are impactful. Taking 100 gold off both those units was really, really nice. But I think that raised them out of D to C, so I think that's the improvement. I don't disagree. I'm not arguing that they're like B or anything. It's like, oh yeah, this is what got them out of D tier for me.
I got him at the tail end of C tier, and I don't know. I think I had him there at the prior game just on the variety of play styles. They couldn't be just hard countered by build right off the bat. But I don't know. The units just aren't good in this game. Their style isn't good for what is good in game 3, in my opinion. In the cores, it just comes down to that. They were the kite faction. Kite's the weakest playstyle now. So now they're going to be a rush faction. Now they're going to be kind of a soft archer kite, not a 360 range unit kite. Like I just don't think that I think the game in the ultra size and the adjustments that they made to unit accuracy just really hurt them more than any other faction in the game.
Agreed. It's kind of crazy to think that at the end of game 2, Wood Elves were considered like top of meta. Whether S or A is not the point, but top of meta. And like that is the faction that from game 2 to 3 took the biggest hit of just like raw top to bottom progression is kind of crazy. All right. Well, that is the tier list. We did it, lads. We did it. Some mild disagreements, but otherwise we were mostly in the same ballpark. Usually it was arguing between one tier difference. A couple places where we had very different ideas.
Penguin's high about Skaven though. That's just straight up. That's marijuana. That's marijuana or something talking.
That's just a lie. Skaven aren't good, dude. Maybe it's just me because I'm a Skaven main. But people talk about Skaven like, oh, I see Skaven all the time. Like, what are you on? I only see me playing these guys, and then I spectate tournaments, and no one fucking picks Skaven. And then in the Phoenix King stats, like, because I see the stats are like, wow, Skaven are like the 6th most played faction. And I'm like, by who? Who's playing this faction?
I think two of the players are in this discussion right now.
Yeah, well, you play a lot more than I do these days, so you must be boosting the stats. I pretty much just play on streams.
Ugh. Oh yeah.
All right.
See, I ban them a lot, so I don't see them that often.
That's because they're good into your faction selection. I mean that you say they're powerful like makes a lot of sense because yes, against Bretonnia, against Empire, against Dark Elves, against Kislev, I would be taking Skaven. I mean they're designed to play against those factions, but yeah, they're just not good against like the Chaos factions and Undead at all.
They used to be good against Cathay, and now the Jet Lion exists, and the Jet Lion can eat my entire ass. I hate that thing. A nearly
Yeah.
unbreakable single entity just charging through my front line, which is what Skaven hate, but also giving them the goddamn harmony buff.
And also mirror missiling your guys.
Yeah, I can't do anything.
Oh god. Oh god.
And then if I surround it with Rat Ogres and Jade Lancers come to its aid, guess what the Jade Lancers get? Fucking harmony.
Oh, it gets the harmony too. This is a two-way interaction.
Yeah, it gets the ranged version though, so it gets missile accuracy, which is super useful for the Jet Lion. But it does
Oh,
get
really?
yeah, it gets speed and leadership, so it gets something, but it doesn't get the melee stats because it provides the yin, so it gets the ranged
Okay.
version.
That is weird.
What if accuracy shadow translated into melee attack? Because it does make it more accurate. Oh well. Anyway, I'll quit bullshitting. Thank you all for coming by, and thanks to these two for hanging out with me for about an hour.
Thank you, sir.
Goodbye.
Thank you
Thanks.
for having us.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Hubs. Thank you, Penguin.
Roar. Subscribe, yes, yes.